I also caught the part where you and I talked about how terrible we were at our jobs because it sounded really bad. Like, oh, this is a terrible way to start. Rachel and I talking about how terrible we are at dialogue. I
Listen
gotta
to
cut
our
all that
advice.
out.
We're garbage.
Yeah.
Okay, but I feel like that,
So
like,
buy my editing
maybe
services.
it low-key might be a good sign, though, because I feel like anybody who's a writer trusts people who don't know they're a writer more. I read this thing once where it was like some sort of tweet where somebody was like, if you've ever questioned if you're queer enough to be a part of the queer community, congratulations, you get 1,000 queer points and you're absolutely belong in the queer community because
That's
that's the most
amazing.
common experience. And at third level, you can cast Fireball.
What?
So
I knew you had magical powers you haven't told me about.
exactly. So I feel like being a writer is very similar, where it's like, do you ever doubt that you're good? Congratulations. That's a cardinal sign.
Welcome to being a writer. The minute you have,
Yeah.
yeah. Every novel you publish, do you think, oh, this is crap and no one's going to read it? Welcome to being a writer.
Do you have crippling self-doubt? Welcome to being a writer.
Welcome to being a writer. Oh, man. Okay, so we're going to start. And I have to introduce you again. So this is Rachael Muller. Rachael Muller is the lead narrative designer at Tailspin Games. Look, I remembered this time. You didn't even have to check your email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember. I thought I was lead narrative writer. No, I'm lead narrative designer.
You're lead narrative designer. We looked at it last week in your email.
I know. I had to.
Not last week. We did not do this last week. It's like, yeah.
That was our first mistake.
It's nonsense. So, yeah, and we're reading the X-Files today, which you picked.
Yeah.
Why did you make me watch the X-Files?
Because it is the greatest. It's kind of the greatest. It's been my quarantine project. It's getting through the X-Files. Because I mean, you know this, but I assume our glorious listeners do not, unless they stop me, which would be weird.
Yeah. Well, our only listener is Olivia. So whether or not she knows this or not is a whole different question.
Olivia, do you know? No, she knows this. I'm very into aliens and weird, spooky things. And so, like, that, you know, plus the X-Files, plus 90s throwbacks, like, it's very weird the amount of, like, large shoulder pads that are in that show, but I kind of love it. Like, it's a very weird show. And also the phones are like bricks, and it just really brings you back.
It troubles me that you think of this as a throwback since it hit its peak while I was in college.
Hey, here's
no more talking. I'm going to go climb under the table and cry right now.
So no, part of it was just because of personal adoration for subject matter reasons. But I also think it's a fun show. It's got very distinctive, like, character voices, I feel like.
It does, yeah.
Scully is very, you know, you can absolutely, if you didn't have names associated and you didn't even have that much context and you had a list of both of their lines, you could pick out who was who very easily.
Yeah, that's super true, which we're going to see in a second.
Yeah.
So you want to hear my weird X-Files story?
Yes.
So X-Files came out in 95. I graduated from high school in 96, and I went to a, like, ghetto inner city high school, so nobody was watching X-Files in my high school. I didn't even know it existed. And then I get to college, and there was this group of super cool kids that were, like, super smart. They were, like, reading Don Quixote in Spanish, and, like, they were, like, the kids that I wanted to be like. I was like, oh my gosh, I totally want to hang out with that group of people. But I was a, like, weird, sheltered Christian kid from the inner city who had only listened to, like, DC Talk and Michael W. Smith and, like, didn't even know, like, music. You should have seen the day I discovered Frank Sinatra. There was some nonsense happening. And then I discovered Bill Withers, and it was all over. So anyway, so they were obsessed with the X-Files, and they asked me if I had seen it. If they ever listened to this, I'm in so much trouble because I've never told them this. They asked me if I had seen it. Specifically, one of the girls asked me if I had seen it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally done with the X-Files." And they were like, "Isn't it amazing?" Because it was in season 3 of my freshman year of college. And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's incredible. It's the best thing ever. It's so amazing." And she started calling me Mulder, and I was supposed to call her Scully. And for the first like month, I had no idea what those words meant. And finally, because there was no streaming, right? Like there was no cell phones were bricks. I had to go to Blockbuster and rent the video.
Oh man, I am. Oh,
And so first I just started trying to watch it in the middle of season 3. And that was a terrible idea.
that's a very bad idea.
Yeah. Historically, this is like one of the first shows that like they didn't give a shit if you saw the previous episodes. They're like, well, too bad for you. You should just go find them. So
Deal with it.
yeah. And there was no like streaming on the internet. So there wasn't like, well, you can just go watch seasons. You can binge 1 through 2. Like
Yeah.
the only thing you binged back then was food. So I had to rent them at Blockbuster, and I tried to catch up, and I finally caught up and had a weird love affair with the show where like I loved the show because this group of people loved the show. Um, yeah, I don't agree. I actually don't think it holds up because I watched it again this week for the first time since the 90s. I
Really?
was like, I
Okay,
don't
what
like this
season
show.
did you watch?
Season 1.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't like
I
it.
kind of love it. It's it's weird because I don't know. I have no idea why I like it. I can't even
I
justify
mean,
it.
it's an amazing show. I think my struggle is that like I've gotten so used to Netflix storytelling
Mm.
that the come to a conclusion in 45 minutes really pisses me off.
Ah,
It really
yeah,
bothers
okay,
me.
I could see that. I could see that. I think for me, it's kind of like a little bit refreshing, like to not have that, or like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, like you said,
I
it's
kind of enjoy
retro
it.
that only old people like dinosaurs would watch. So
Listen, I'm just saying, I have a little bit of novelty effect working for me because I never watched it before,
it's all right.
so it's exciting.
It's really funny.
Also,
Oh,
the 90s were great, and I just associate them with like really comfortable jeans and also slam poetry in cafes, which I realize is not correct,
no,
but
yeah. I totally went to a cafe and did slam poetry once.
wait, really?
Oh, yeah. It was terrible.
Okay, we're talking about this after the episode.
I was super inspired by So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Yes! Oh my god, that's exactly what I was thinking of. That's
She was a
exactly it.
thief. You gotta believe. She stole my heart and my cat. So I tried to do something like totally witty like that. And
Yes.
it was not. It was terrible. I had pictures that went along with it. Not in like a real projector. We did have like a computer projector back then. And it was really, really bad. I was a super dork in high school. In college. In high school, I was like, you know, the one Caucasian kid in a school of minorities that just desperately wanted to fit in. But in in college, I was voted by my senior class the most likely person to invite you to church. In college, David, sorry. This is terrible podcasting. We're really bad at this.
Yeah.
So, but I got to tell these stories because they're fun. They had a senior class night where like the junior class put on a play about the senior class, and it was like
Yeah.
a joke. And they tried to include as many senior class members in the play as they could. And so like not actually us, but like representations of us on stage. The only time I got included was
Yeah.
there were several times during the 1.5 hour long drama that a character would come on and invite everybody on the stage to church. Um, and then leave. And that was me. So yeah, man, that was a long time ago. So when I got to college, I was just super excited about like being friends with people. So I did slam poetry at a coffee house at the Baptist Student Union.
That that was a journey, and I feel like I know you more.
Oh no, it's
Incredible.
terrible. Why are we doing a podcast? So yeah, so back to the X Files. So I have a love-hate relationship with this movie, with this show, and watching it, I think brought back all of those emotions. I was like,
Ah,
no,
okay.
once again, I am a weird 18-year-old kid who just desperately wants to fit in and is like binge watching this show on VCR tapes in order to like impress these kids that are way smarter than I am in hopes that because I was in remedial English and they're like reading Don Quixote in Spanish. And so I was like, you are on a All right. Enough about me. So we're reading the X-Files. And we are going to read. I got two scenes.
Okay.
So the best
Okay.
part about this is that you can just search X-Files screenplays, and there's a guy on the internet who's transcribed every episode.
God bless the
It's amazing.
internet
Oh,
and nerds.
it's the
God
greatest
bless
thing in the
nerds.
world. Yeah, it's
Wait,
amazing. I
wait.
thought like I'm gonna have to sit and transcribe an episode of the X-Files, and
No.
I did not. He has already done every episode, and the movie.
Wow. That's commitment.
Yeah, he's into it. Um, so I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
How do I do that? See, dude, I'm so old. How do I
I
share?
also I also have it open if you don't want to.
Well, but we have listeners who might want to see it.
Wait, are you recording this?
Yeah,
Like with video? I didn't know you were recording it. It's a podcast, Jeff. It's
I told you this
audio.
last week. I'm putting it on YouTube. You know
I,
these things.
I think I blocked this from my mind.
Why do I keep saying last week? It was clearly 2 weeks ago. Um, you know these things. Yeah, video,
No,
everything. It's all going. It's all happening. Can you see the X-Files thing
I
there?
can. I
Okay, great.
can.
I'm never sure if I'm like actually like sharing because I have 3 screens. I'm never sure if I'm actually like sharing my email.
Mm.
Oh, I did that in a meeting this week. I was like, all right, so like I was saying in this program we're writing, and they're like, Jeff, that's your email. I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, so long as the first email like subject line wasn't like "this meeting sucks," like I feel like you're probably all right.
Tell that one guy he's the worst. No, it did not say that. Okay, so the first scene we're gonna read is the first conversation that Mulder and Scully have.
Okay.
So these are the two detectives. They are supernatural detectives. Coming in before this, Scully is the doctor, scientist, skeptic, and Mulder is the guy that's like totally bought in and is complete fanatic.
Yeah.
And this scene actually happens. What's interesting to me about this episode is they get like a cast of characters around them, but this happens before that cast of characters. So it's like they're just them, which is
The OG.
it's almost impossible to find a scene with just the two of them in it because it's usually them interviewing other people.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, and like they'll have like little one-offs at the end of an interview with each other, but like finding a scene of just the two of them was really difficult. So this is their first conversation. What's happened is before we come into this scene is that Scully was upstairs with a bunch of high-level FBI agents telling her that she has a new partner and she has to go meet him in the basement and she's supposed to be spying on them for him.
Okay.
So, do you want to read Mulder or Scully?
I definitely want to read Mulder. I mean, I feel like between the two of us, I'm obviously the one who wants to be abducted by aliens way more than you do.
Oh, no, I do not want to be abducted by aliens. This is something else I don't know that we've talked about. I actually have a very irrational fear of aliens and being abducted, and I am like afraid of it. So I do not want to be abducted by aliens. They will poke me with things.
I have a great story for you after this episode. Hold on.
I'm so excited.
Okay.
I'm so excited. But the podcast listeners have already heard too many weird stories from us, so they don't get your story. We save your story for insiders only, which is me. Sorry, that's just nervous. Okay, so I'm excited you're Mulder because you got to start.
Okay, are we reading the stage directions or are we just letting
I don't think the stage directions are actually important in this one, and they're numerous. This is another interesting thing about this script, like as I've been studying screenwriting, because I've never done any screenwriting, so but I've been studying it like crazy because I think it's a fascinating thing to take a story and just write the dialogue. Like that's really interesting to me, which is what a screenwriting is. So this screenwriting is really, and I went to and looked at the original movie script too, and the movie script is this way as well. So it's not just this guy that copied these scenes. The screenwriting is interesting because it has a lot of direction in it.
Yeah.
Whereas like most screenwriting I've seen doesn't, but this has a lot of direction in it, which is fascinating to me. So no, let's not read those because they're weird details. Like he takes his glasses and looks at the paper. Like we don't need to know that because we're not talking about that. We're talking about the dialogue. Maybe if I stop telling weird stories. All right. All that to say, you get to start.
Excellent. Whew. All right. Sorry, nobody down here but the FBI's most unwanted.
Agent Mulder, I'm Dana Scully. I've been assigned to work with you.
Oh, isn't it nice to be so suddenly so highly regarded? So, who did you tick off to get stuck with this detail, Scully?
Actually, I'm looking forward to working with you. I've heard a lot about you.
Oh, really? I was under the impression that you were sent to spy on me.
If you have any doubt about my qualifications or credentials,
You're a medical doctor. You teach at the academy. You did your undergraduate degree in physics. Einstein's twin paradox, a new interpretation. Dana Scully senior thesis. Now that's a credential, rewriting Einstein.
did you bother to read it?
I did. I liked it. It's just that in most of my work, the laws of physics rarely seem to apply. Maybe I can get your medical opinion on this, though. Organ female.
I told you there were a lot of acting, like stage directions. Sorry.
There really are. There
There really
really
are.
are. Okay. Second character. Organ female, age 21, no explainable cause of death. Autopsy shows nothing. Zip. There are, however, these two distinct marks on her lower back. Dr. Scully, can you ID these marks?
Needle punctures, maybe? An animal bite? Electrocution of some kind?
How's your chemistry? This is the substance found in the surrounding tissue.
It's organic. I don't know. Is it some kind of synthetic protein?
Beats me. I've never seen it before either. But here it is again in Sturgis, South Dakota, and again in Shamrock, Texas.
Do you have a theory?
I have plenty of theories. Maybe you can explain to me why it's bureau policy to label these cases as unexplained phenomenon and ignore them. Do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrials?
Logically, I would have to say no. Given the distances needed to travel from the far reaches of space, the energy requirements would exceed a spacecraft's capabilities. The
Conventional wisdom. You know this organ female. She's the fourth person in her graduating class to die under mysterious circumstances. Now, when convention and science offer us no answers, might we not finally turn to the fantastic as a plausibility?
the girl obviously died of something. If it wasn't natural causes, it's probably that there was something missed in the post-mortem. If she was murdered, it's plausible that there was a sloppy investigation. What I find fantastic is any notion that there are answers beyond the realm of science. The answers are there. You just have to know where to look.
That's why they put the I in FBI. See you tomorrow morning, Scully, bright and early. We leave for the very plausible state of Oregon at 8 a.m.
End scene. We did it! Yay! All right. Thoughts about the scene?
Um, let's see. I feel like it does a good job of the whole talking past each other thing. The her sort of dodge of his like ploy of I thought you were sent to spy on me, where she just totally doesn't engage and she's like, what about my credentials? That's not what he was saying at all. That's not like if somebody was like, you're spying on me, the natural answer for me would be no or yes, depending on the situation. I don't know. I'm not a good spy. But it wouldn't be like if
you were sent to spy on me. Yes, I was.
yeah, that's why I'm not a spy. Or am I? Is that what a spy would say? Let's
Oh, I'm so
consider it.
confused.
But I feel like the whole talking past each other thing is really well done there, and it sort of drives home her character that she's like a very rules follower, structure, order, that sort of thing. Because she focuses immediately on credentials, like I need these papers to back me up, I need this structure, I need somebody that's told me that I am qualified to do what I am doing, and I need that to prove to the rest of the world that that is the case. Which
Yeah. Yeah, they totally set up both characters here really well by like you were saying before we started with their contrasting dialogue. Like he's more loose and he's playing loose with the rules. Like, you know, he makes the statement like the laws of physics don't apply here. Like, and but she's very technical and very tight with her words, where like he's got these long paragraphs, she's got like quick responses, which is
Mhm.
like a strong way to contrast the characters just beyond like what they're saying, the amount that they're saying contrasts them. And I am impressed by this scene because it sets up the two characters really quick. This is maybe
Yeah, yeah.
three
I mean, I think
minutes.
yeah, and I think there's something too about the language they use. He goes with so who did you tick off?
Mm-hmm.
And she, I'm scanning here. She, has all sorts of the longest words
Yeah,
associated with her even. Einstein's twin paradox, a new interpretation is the title of her thesis.
yeah,
She's got, you know, she uses the word plausible so much at the end, which is what he mocks.
yeah. And it's good here. Like even this section here, which you're pointing out, like her thesis has an absurd title,
Yeah,
and like rewriting Einstein, like he's kind of set her up. And then she immediately has this skeptical moment where she's like, did you bother to read it? Which sets her up as the skeptic right away. Like even before they're talking about aliens, they're already having this moment where she's questioning his comments and questioning his ideas and questioning what he says, which becomes her role in the show, right? Like he's the all in guns blazing, and she's the eternal skeptic of like
yeah,
looking for the logical explanation.
yeah,
So yeah, I like what you're saying. They do that like right up front with this like, and he's always, and like, so here I liked it. Like this exchange right here very much defines their characters, because he in turn is always surprising her skepticism
hmm,
with kind of endearing engagement with her. I would say like she plays a little stiff as a character, just like her voice here is stiff. He plays very relaxed and like loose, and so
yeah,
even here the like I liked it, like putting an affirmation in his mouth already starts to kind of engage him with her right away. So you get that like, you know, her questioning and pushing back and him like drawing her in, which is kind of
yeah,
the whole dynamic. And it
yeah.
couple lines, but in the whole show.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It very much mirrors their dynamic. I think it also, with her, did you bother to read it? It hints a little bit at like sort of an undercurrent that I see about her character, where she does sort of have this extreme skepticism, draw towards order. But I think part of it maybe comes from like a small like place of defensiveness, where like it's implied sometimes that she, like, I mean, again with the credentials thing, like maybe she is like looked down on, because we're talking like fairly early 90s, especially at the FBI, like
Yeah.
that's a position to be in. So
I
I
actually
think
don't remember another, and I may be wrong about this. X-Files nerds can um, come to my house and yell at me. Don't come to my house. Um, Yell at me on the internet. That's what it's for. I don't remember another female FBI agent in the show. I think
yeah,
she's the only one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed reasonable at the time. So her, did you bother to read it? And like talking about her credentials, it very much sets her up in this skeptical mode, but while sort of giving a little tip or like a little hint at maybe like there are some justified reasons for her clinging to facts and credentials, because she's had to fight really, really hard to have them backing her up in order to be in this field where maybe she doesn't have the same like privileges
Yeah.
as Fox does.
Yeah. 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 I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I think that's true. I do. It does hack me off a little bit that he keeps interrupting her, um,
Yeah.
which is a very like. I feel like as writers now we're more aware of that. We
Hmm.
should be. You should be. If you're not more aware of that, you should be more aware of that.
Yeah.
Um, if your characters are cutting off a female doctor, if your male character is cutting off a female doctor, your character reads as an a-hole.
Yeah.
So, and he does here a little bit, like, but in the '90s, I don't think that was the intention.
Yeah.
I think the intention was like, oh, he's cool. He's got all these cool theories and answers, but it's one of those things that doesn't translate into today. Like I read it and I'm like, just let her talk, dude. Stop.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. It's I think it was supposed to be read as like a little cocky and devil may care. But I do think it's a point well taken that unless you are a young David Duchovny in the 90s, don't do that.
Yeah, don't have your hero do that. It makes your hero read badly.
Yeah.
Um, can I talk about what hacks me off about this scene, which is one of my biggest pet
Yeah.
peeves? So this here, where he says there are two distinct marks on the lower back. Dr. Scully, can you ID these marks? So like in the scene, he's actually got like a like projector camera like showing this slide of these two marks in this person's back, and the two marks look like these little round moles, like these little brown round moles.
Oh, I remember that.
And
Yeah.
so her medical diagnosis: needle punctures, animal bite, or electrocution. Like, come on. She
They
rewrote Einstein's theory, and the best thing she could come up with is like the same things my 15-year-old is going to say. Like maybe somebody stabbed him, or like maybe it was an animal that bit him, or maybe they were struck by lightning. Like, you know, come on, like that's just lazy. Like, or then
yeah.
the next line makes me so mad. How's your chemistry? This is the substance found on the surrounding tissue. He puts this giant molecule on the screen. Like it's this, this huge molecule. And she says, it's organic, which means it has carbon in it. Like this, yeah.
Oh man.
Okay. Like, so like, this is just like, I get that this is not like ER where they need to make the doctor sound at least quasi-intelligent when they're
Yeah.
talking about their patients, but this is just lazy. Like, how's your chemistry? It's organic. Yeah, like, every sophomore in college can tell you that there's a C on that slide, therefore it's an organic molecule. Anyway, that's just that was one of my major, him cutting her off, and
Peeves.
then the lack of actual science by the doctor who's rewriting Einstein was really frustrating to me. It's like, no, come on. Yeah. Anyway,
That's
uh,
pretty valid.
any other observations you have?
No, to be honest, I don't have any good critiques of this because I am 2 stars in my eyes about the X Files and I love it too much.
So it does
So
no wrong.
yeah.
It does no wrong. Yeah, I do. I do love this scene. The reason I pulled this scene for us to read is because I do love how well it sets up the characters and like their varying voices and um, what the user can expect from them. Uh,
Mhm.
and even in the whole like arc of the pilot, by the end of the pilot, you get kind of a microcosm of what's going to happen in the whole show, which is great, which is her starting to accept which is him going out on a crazy limb that he shouldn't go out on, and her starting to accept his theories. So like even in the pilot, you start to get the like feel of these two characters and what their dynamic is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason people loved this show over like other weird alien shows is because Scully and Mulder were so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's why I love it.
Yeah. Okay, you want to read one more?
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Okay, so this is a long one, but this is one of my favorite episodes. Well, so let's just say
Okay, hold up. Is this season 3?
it is.
Jeff,
No,
what
no,
did I
no,
tell
no.
you?
It follows the rules. It follows all the rules.
What did I
So
tell you?
let me just explain to anybody listening that Rachel demanded episodes from the X-Files that have no spoilers, which is why, like, well, I guess I can do the pilot. And like,
No, I said
bad.
seasons 1 and 2. You had seasons 1 and 2. You
So
had all of seasons 1 and 2.
every once in a while in the show, there's a one-off episode that has nothing to do with the larger plot. Season 3, episode 4 is one of those one-off episodes.
All
It has
right,
nothing to do with the larger plot. It
I'll
is,
accept it.
you take, and it's really brilliant writing because they like, oh, see, I'm gonna rant. This was my problem with the newest Star Wars movies. When you have two great characters that are in a partnership together, Oh, we didn't even talk about how that was like classic detective set up the case. I'll come back to that in a second. When you have to when you have two characters that are in a partnership together and the really groove with each other, and like that the reader or the audience loves to like engage with, you want to see those characters go on an adventure together. You
Yeah.
don't want to see them like go in opposite directions like the new Star Wars movies did, where they're like, we're going to send Rey over there and we're going to send everybody else over here. Like, you want to see them go together, because
Yeah.
part of what you love is like Luke and Han like interacting with each other. So
Yeah.
um this show was amazing about that, and that like they had these episodes that they would throw in that were just like Scully and Mulder going on an adventure together, and they get like real detective show. Because this show like walks the genre line between the like alien monster and the detective, because it's very much
Mm.
it can very much at times feel like a police procedural. And
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say about that scene above that I forgot to mention, is that this scene is like a fantastic genre moment that has to happen in every police procedural, where one character gets the case and explains the case to the other character. It
Yeah.
has to happen in every cop show, and they do it so great here, where they like get Mulder has the case and he's going to explain it to Scully, and he wraps it on a nice bow, which is like, get your butt on that plane at 8 a.m. Right? Like,
Yeah.
yay, different. um so like just setting up the adventure of like what we can expect. Okay, this is happening. It's happening to high school students. There's like four of them, and we're gonna go solve these weird markings, right? Like
Yeah.
teases the like mystery that's about to uncover for the police procedural, which is
Yeah.
really good. Yeah. So this is the reason I took all that to say all of that vomit of words to say the reason I picked season 3, episode 4 is because it's a one-off, so there's no spoilers. So it meets
Okay.
all of your demands. It is also won 2 Emmys, which is crazy. So Darren Morgan wrote it. He and a lot of times when we were talking about The Magicians last time we talked, and we were like, oh, the writer's done all these amazing things and she's written all this incredible stuff. Darren Morgan's written like 8 episodes of television, maybe 10. Um, he's written a lot of pilots, according to his Wikipedia page, that didn't get picked up. Like, so
Huh.
I have a massive amount of respect for that, because he's a trench writer. Like,
Yeah.
but he won an Emmy for this episode, and it's totally, if you want to dive into the X-Files and don't want to
Yeah.
like watch everything, but you want to get a feel for the show before you commit to like, I think there's 8 seasons in a movie, before
Yeah.
you commit to that on that insane thing. um Watch this one episode, and it gives you a great feel for like how the show is, and it's totally a one-off, and you'll get it right away. You're like, oh yeah, okay, I get Scully and Mulder, I know exactly who they are. They're the FBI agents coming into the local town. The local town has a problem, it's going to solve it, and it's got psychics and supernatural. But so he won an Emmy for this episode, which massive props and huge respect, being a writer in the trenches and just pulling this episode and like crushing it. And
Yeah.
Peter Doyle is the guest star, and he won an Emmy for being the guest star in this episode too, which is
Huh.
crazy. Um, and he's really good. So Peter Doyle is playing Clyde Bruckmans. Clyde Bruckman. So when we read this one, it's going to be weird because one of us is going to have to read both Scully and Mulder.
All right. I'm about it.
Okay, because there's 3 characters. There's Clyde. So just to set it up, what's happened is they come to a town where there's like a serial killer who's murdering psychics,
Hmm.
and the cops in the small town have brought in this like clearly fake, extravagant, like, you know, kind of like from the TV show Psych type psychic, who's like running around the room and like doing all these crazy things and like sniffing the carpet and like,
Yeah.
and giving vague things like, I'm seeing a 7 and a church and water. So like, and so Mulder has already had a confrontation with this psychic that he's like full of crap. They find another dead body, and it's found by this unassuming guy, Clyde Bruckman. And so Mulder and Scully have come to talk to Clyde about, who's played by Peter Doyle, about how he knew where the body was.
Huh.
So
Okay.
that's the setup. And there's actually
Okay.
two scenes here because the first one is pretty short, but I kept them both because they just go from one scene right into the next. Like
Okay.
it's just one conversation that spans two locations.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You have to start again, which makes me happy because starting is the worst. I can totally follow you, but I don't want to start anything.
Valid. According to the police report, Mr. Bruckman, you didn't touch the body after you found her,
Why would I want to do? Oh, why would I want to?
but you reported that you found a body with its eyes cut out. The body was face down. If you didn't move it, how did you know that the eyes had been removed?
Well, they had been, hadn't they? Then what are you complaining about?
How had the eyes been cut out?
By a piece of a crystal ball of all the cockamamie things. I love the word cockamamie.
Pro advice. Everybody should use it more.
Everybody should use cockamamie. Sorry. Back to the scene.
We did find some crystal shards on the body. How do you know it was from a crystal ball?
Well, it just figures. I mean, if a guy goes to kill a fortune teller, he's obviously going to assault her with her own crystal ball and use the shattered piece as sort of a lance, isn't he?
Mr. Bruckman, how much have you heard about the recent slayings in town?
Just that some nut is going around killing fortune tellers and ripping their eyes and entrails out.
How did you know about the entrails? That information hasn't been released to the press.
I never read the papers. Too depressing.
Mr. Bruckman? Sorry, Mr. Bruckman, but I'm going to have to ask you to come with us.
Okay, so we changed locations.
Step inside, Mr. Bruckman.
Why? What is this all about?
A murder occurred here earlier this evening, and we have reason to believe that it was committed by the same person who murdered the woman that you found. Is there anything you can tell us about it?
I didn't do it.
You're not under suspicion. But I do harbor a suspicion that you can see things about this crime, things that we can't see.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
I think you do.
Yeah, right. I'd like to see both of your badges again right now.
I don't blame you, Mr. Bruckman.
I'm supposed to believe that that's a real name. Oh, sorry, it's still me. What's all this about? I found a dead body in my dumpster. I reported it to the police, and now suddenly I'm accused of doing things or being able to do things that I couldn't possibly. Long section of action.
Long section.
He runs into the bathroom and throws up. That's what happens. And now we
Pinch,
have Mulder and Scully. So I'll read Scully. You read Mulder.
pinch me.
This guy's performing the same routine. This super duper yappy. He's just doing it in a different style.
No, something told me, Scully. Something is telling me this guy's for real.
Oh, so now you're psychic? Okay, Bruckman walks back in. I'll be Bruckman again. The killer, he doesn't feel like he's in control of his own life. I mean, like, who is? Am I? But this guy, he truly believes it. He sees himself as some kind of puppet.
Can you describe him? Do you get a visual impression of him?
Bruckman says no.
So you can see in him, but not at him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give you any negative energy.
Negative energy. What is this?
What is it? What do you see?
He's having sex with her there.
Is he raping her?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, she's instigating the whole thing.
Then what's wrong?
Oh, sometimes it just seems like everyone is having sex except for me. He walks over to the dolls.
Mr. Bruckman, can you tell us why the killer is murdering people in the way that he is?
Why does anybody do the things they do? Why do I sell insurance? I wish I knew. Why did this woman collect dolls? What was it about her life? Was it one specific moment where she suddenly said, I know, dolls? Or was it a whole series of things, starting when her parents first met that somehow combined in such a way that in the end, she had no choice but to be a doll collector? You'll find the woman, oh, so he picks up a weird doll and looks at it. You'll find the woman tomorrow morning by the fat little white Nazi stormtrooper, Glenview Lake. Her body's floating in Glenview Lake. Now, excuse me, I think I've seen enough death for one night. Insane.
That's interesting. I'm excited for this episode.
Have you not gotten this far yet and you're rewatching?
No, no, I'm only season 2.
Oh, it's a fantastic. Oh, that's why you wanted no spoilers, because you didn't want me to ruin the show for you.
Yeah,
Oh,
also for context, I didn't say no spoilers. I said season 1 and 2.
you also said no spoilers. I thought you were just being a purist. I
No.
super apologize. I'm so sorry to
Oh, it's
everyone on
fine.
the podcast and to you. I thought you were being a purist and you were like, don't tell anybody how it ends. I didn't
No,
realize you
don't
hadn't
tell.
gotten this far.
Screw everyone else. Don't tell me how it ends.
Oh, that's great. I'm so sorry. I didn't
No,
tell
it's
you
fine.
anything. And now I'm not going to tell you how this episode ends, because I was going to be like, well, at the ending of this episode, but now I won't do
You
that.
you could do it. It's just the one,
No,
and
I
you said
won't.
it
It's really
doesn't
good.
really. Okay.
Okay. What did you think of the dialogue?
I liked his sort of distraction and like rambling around. It was weird because it was sort of so you when you think of psychics, or at least when I think of psychics in my head, you think of that sort of like mystical, like, oh, I'm like getting a vision. And you're sort of like otherworldly, like a Trelawney kind of deal from like
Yeah.
Harry Potter, like
Yeah.
seeing the Grin. But this was very it was the same sort of rambling feel, but with like a very down to earth tone where he's like, everybody's having sex except for me. And he's like, he doesn't buy his own abilities almost, but still sort of fits that like style of dialogue. So it's a very weird but nice juxtaposition.
Yeah, and it fits. I like what you're saying, and it's very with the like police procedural voice of Scully and Mulder, where like Mulder's like bad cop and Scully's like good cop. Um, he's a really great contrast to that, because
Hmm.
he's like doesn't seem to have his crap together,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I love that they wrote this interrogation style. So you've got like Scully and Mulder are really just asking questions and making accusations in this scene. Like they're
Yeah.
just like, and there's even, especially at the beginning, you can't even really tell the difference. Like you read both parts and it didn't matter, because they're really just playing cop here. Like it's
Yeah.
not that it doesn't, they're doing the good cop bad cop a little bit, but it's more, it does, you could really fill them in with any generic FBI agent for the opening of
Yeah.
this scene. It's all about Bruckman and how he's evading the interrogation, which is like, it makes for really great drama when the whoever the authority figure is having to pull information out of the witness slash suspect. This
Hmm.
like, what are they, it really sets up a mystery well, right? Because like the X-Files in its nature, I think I said this earlier, is just a mystery show. So in a
Yeah.
lot of ways it operates like a supernatural Sherlock Holmes, right? Like they're just discovering clues and piecing the mystery together. um and and they do have the like, Scully and Mulder do have the like Holmes and Watson type relationship,
Yeah.
which is almost necessary for any of these like police procedurals. You always need the like loose and fast cop and the like,
Yeah.
by the book cop. But when you get into, I think the important thing that I take away from this is that like those side characters are actually what makes these scenes. Like
Yeah.
Bruckman is what makes the scene, and the
Yeah.
way he's stumbling through things and like giving you very naturally giving you like half truths. And it's not until his like third or fourth answer that you actually start to see that he's a psychic,
Yeah.
right? Like until his third or fourth answer, you think he killed the woman. So like,
Yeah.
it's not until you get down to like him knowing about entrails as well, and kind
Yeah.
of the way he shares about it. And then this line here is where it really starts to take a like X-Files weird turn, is that I never read the papers, it's too depressing. So
Yeah.
like he here is communicating indirectly, look, I'm special, right?
Yeah.
Like he's because up here he's talking about, oh, there's some nut killing fortune tellers, and up here he's saying like, oh well, it just figures that she died with a crystal ball, right? Like that makes sense. Why else would you? How else would you kill a fortune teller? Right, stabbing her in the eye with a crystal lance, which is weird. But then down here he's clearly hinting, look, I know I don't read the papers, so like I have extra knowledge that you don't know. Um,
Yeah.
and I like how there's a turn in the scene here where Mulder is now buying in and Scully. So in the second half of the scene, we get that like separation between their personalities where you'll notice like Mulder does all the talking in the first half of the scene because he's totally buying in and trying to just get Bruckman to admit that he's a psychic. And
Yeah.
Scully doesn't come back until closer to the end where she's having a one-on-one. Like she says here, we don't blame you, Mr. Bruckman, but then she doesn't really talk again until Scully and Mulder have their back and forth. So she
Yeah.
shuts down at the first half of this conversation and lets Mulder do his thing and then comes back at the end. Um, and this is her big like landing line of skepticism, so you can see into him but not at him,
Yeah.
right? Like this big like I don't believe you. And then the scene direction, which we didn't read, is they both glare at her. And like, so like, yeah, which is, and one of the things I love about this scene is the power dynamics, because it starts with that like interrogation up front with Mulder and Scully having all the power, asking this old man questions, and him like evading and evading. And then by the end of the scene, we actually have the old man and Mulder together, and Scully is now on the outside again. So they like the power dynamics of the room shifts in the middle of the scene, and
Yeah.
I think when you can pull that off well, it's really it makes for a great like moment in dialogue where somebody trades sides. It's a
Yeah.
nice, yeah, yeah. Anyway, what
Yeah.
else did you see in the scene that you liked?
Um, I liked I was surprised that I liked rather, towards the end, why does anyone do the things they do? Why do I sell insurance? I think I was surprised because I think a lot of sort of bigger self-reflections like that, or like, why does it, like, why is the universe, that can sound very trite, very fast, and like very forced, because in their day-to-day lives, most people don't go around like thinking big existential thoughts. But I think like there is a place for them. I think the tendency for writers, myself included, is to put those moments in the mouths of your main characters,
Mm-hmm.
because you feel like you know your main characters' voices and it feels more comfortable to do that. But I think this was a good example of what happens when you put that into a voice you're less familiar with. And it sort of lends this air of like discovery and novelty to like the cop dynamic that you identified, where they're sort of like investigating and developing this third like more distinctive voice. So I kind of like that they like saved that moment of weird existential reflection for a non-regular. Like I think that's a good move to make.
Yeah, I really like it, and it changes. It brings a nice conclusion to the scene where
Mhm.
he's like, because they go granular into like the details of what's going on, and then he has this moment of like weirdness where he's like picking up a doll and just like walking around, and like, and then they land the scene with this question, which is like you're saying, I think really great to put it in, because a lot of times the X-Files will have Mulder give this moment to Scully where,
Yeah.
because you haven't seen the episode, so I can tell you that question, why does anybody do the things they do, that's what the whole episode is about.
Ah.
So he's setting the scene, and a lot of times it's Mulder asking that question to Scully that like
Yeah.
sets the theme of the episode, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so like, oh, this episode's going to be about why would kids wander off into the woods to get away from their parents? And the answer is because their parents are evil aliens. Or like,
Yeah.
why does this guy have so many trophies on his wall? Because he's an egomaniac, right? Like, so there's like, Mulder's usually asking that question to Scully, but in this episode, they put it in the side character's voice, and it's so better fits there.
Yeah.
Right? Like it makes it unique and like, yeah, really beautiful. Um,
Yeah, it leads to like a sense of discovery, and if your main characters are discovering something and feeling novelty, then chances are your audience probably is too.
yeah, yeah, totally. Can I tell you about my pet peeve of this episode?
Yes.
Which is again something if you haven't watched the whole episode you wouldn't catch. My pet peeve of this scene. If you haven't watched the episode you wouldn't catch. He does this thing. So you see this murder before this happens.
Yeah.
And the way the murder goes down is the murderer comes in, he's getting his palm read, and then he just kills this woman. And he's like mocking her for not knowing that it was coming. And
Okay.
there's a little like roll on the floor. And then we go to they cut to something else. And so Bruckman here talks about they were having consensual sex.
Huh.
And unless and I'm talking about somebody who watched the episode and heard that line and was like, what is he talking about? Unless they killed somebody else and this is a different murder.
Yeah.
And like, so they've had like multiple murders and this is a totally different murder. That's very possible. I could be completely wrong about these two, but this even so, and even if this isn't the same woman that dies at the beginning of the episode, which is
Yeah.
totally possible, even so, this murderer is not having sex with anybody in the show.
Yeah.
So this scene where he says, yeah, they had consensual sex before he killed her is super out of character.
Yeah.
And like very weird for the plot of the show. And it
Yeah.
makes a funny moment where he can deliver this line of like, everybody's having sex with me. Ha ha ha. But like, this is one of my pet peeves about writing dialogue is that people drop these like clues and then never follow up on them. Just because the whole show, I'm waiting for them to explain why this murderer was having sex with this woman before he killed her when he hasn't had sex with anybody else. He's just
Yeah.
killing people. Why is he having sex with this one? They never explain it. They never,
Yeah.
yeah. It's that whole
Yeah.
rule of mysteries of like, if you bring a gun into the room in the early, I forget who said it, but if you bring a gun in Act 3, somebody better die by Act 8. Like that's like somebody better be shot by Act 8. Like that's the,
Yeah.
and I'm totally screwing up that quote, but that's the general rule is like, if you flash a knife, somebody better be stabbed, right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
here they drop this whole like sex gag and then do nothing with it. They just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, again, like I haven't seen it, so I have no idea what I'm talking about. But based on sort of what you're saying,
That's what we do
um,
here.
yes, obviously. Um, Based on what you're saying, it sounds like it also could very plausibly just be, I made a mistake in the plotting of this and I didn't recognize that this didn't happen, or I didn't think about how this fit into the larger plot,
Yeah,
or
or it might have been an editing thing. Like I know a lot of
yeah,
times, especially when they're doing TV, they film too much and then they have to cut back. And it may be that the explanation of this scene got cut back, but this line couldn't be cut back because it's so in the flow of the dialogue,
yeah,
which is an issue as a novelist that I don't have because I can just cut whatever the heck I want. So yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
think it
which is
gets
probably
to,
why I have less sympathy because I'm like, you just cut it, just go back and edit it. It's a failure of editing. But if you're videoing, editing becomes far more complicated.
okay, so it's a failure of editing, but it's also potentially a slight failure of planning.
Yeah,
Um, because you're gonna, I mean, you're gonna have drafts and you're gonna make mistakes, but especially for something like how the murder happened, like it's fairly central, but it's also something that, at least for myself, I mean, maybe there are people with eidetic memories out there who I'm very jealous of. Um, I need to have written down, like, I
yeah,
need some sort of cheat sheet of like, if he mentions his uncle Gary, I don't want him to mention his Uncle Ted unless he talks about how his Uncle Ted and Uncle Gary interact, because it just gets distracting at a point, right?
yeah. I don't even know these people. Are they important? If they're not
Yeah,
important, Yeah.
Exactly. And also, if you call him Uncle Gary, he better not be, like something else later,
Yep.
or, like you got to keep the name straight. You can't
Yeah.
be changing the ages.
That's
And
right.
like, it's really stupid and basic, but like what seems like a minor mistake to you because you can't see the forest for the trees is going to stick out to somebody else, and then they'll miss out on all the really cool stuff that you're doing elsewhere because they'll just be like sitting there thinking about what an idiot you are because you couldn't remember one of the names of your characters.
Yeah. And I will also divulge, just to relate to this a little bit. I super guilty in every novel I write of changing the spelling of someone's name like 4 or 5 times. I'm the worst. My editor has literally sent me a message that like, you spelled this person's name these 5 ways. This is an email I got. And she wrote, you spelled
Five?
this person these 5 ways. I'm not going to tell you which one you did. You have to tell me which spelling is correct. I was like, I don't know. Pick one. Yeah. Or
Oh my god.
for the longest time. So, okay, this is another, man, we're just having confessions with Jeff. For the longest time, my first novel, I called the main character Mencken Casey.
Yeah.
I loved Mencken Casey. It took a reader talking to me about the novel to realize that I had misspelled his last name wrong. And his name is actually Mencken Cassie.
Oh no. Okay, but counter argument, names are weird things. I should technically be Mueller, but I'm Muller because I said so.
Yeah, but it is clearly Cassie. It is clearly Cassie. But I can't spell. So it's like,
Oh.
Maggie Casey, this is great. That's a strong name, strong name. And somebody was talking to me like, oh man, I love it when Cassie does this thing. I'm like, Cassie? Who is Cassie?
Oh my god.
And I was like, yeah, I
Great.
wrote that. That's the best. I don't know who you're talking about. Okay, so back to the script. My last pet peeve,
Okay.
which again is something I'm going to tell you now so that you can laugh when you get to this episode and you actually watch it. You'll find the woman tomorrow morning by the fat little white Nazi stormtrooper. What do you think he's describing there?
I have literally no idea.
I
I
was,
was thinking
yeah, go for it. Sorry.
I don't like I don't it was some sort of really weird doll but like with a Star Wars stormtrooper on it.
Yeah,
So I don't.
because they're setting him up as a psychic, right?
Yeah.
So like the big reveal is going to be like they come around a corner and there's a statue of a fat stormtrooper with like a Hitler mustache on it. Like that's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
It's a propane tank.
What?
Right? Right? It's a propane tank.
Does
This
it
is
have
the
a
worst description of a large white propane tank that I've ever seen in my life. I don't know why it's a Nazi.
Yeah, I was about to ask, does it have a swastika on it?
I mean, there's red stuff on it. I didn't look at it that closely. When they didn't reveal that it was I was so excited about a fat stormtrooper with a Hitler mustache. I was so
And
excited.
then it didn't
I was like,
deliver.
oh, this is going to be amazing. And then they turn the corner, and there's a scene where the Mulder is trying to convince Scully that it looks like a fat white stormtrooper. And Scully's like, yeah, I guess it does. I'm like, no, it doesn't. What are you talking about?
Not. Oh my god. No, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
no.
Anyway. All right. What else do we need to talk about with this script? Anything else?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I again, sorry, I'm kind of like failing you on the negatives here. It's just because I love it a lot.
No, it's great. Get to season 6 and then let's talk again.
All right.
Yeah, no. And again, I have weird emotional connections to this show, which is why I probably don't absolutely love it because it reminds me of a Jeff from days past that
Uh,
thankfully 20 years later I've matured out of. Um, so yeah. Anyway. All right. All right. So we did it.
we did it.
Nice episode.
Great.
Thanks for doing this again with me.
Excellent. Thank
Okay.
you for having me. Stop recording.
If somebody wants to find you online, where do they find you?
Oh, goodness. literally nowhere. I
Okay,
don't know. Am I supposed to have something for this?
that's fair.
You should probably edit this part out. I'm not really online. I
No,
don't
this is
have
staying
anything.
in. This is
Oh,
fantastic.
come on.
Yeah, if you want to find Rachel online, go to the headquarters of Tailspin,
Oh, do
knock
not.
on the door, and say, "Can I speak to Rachel Muller,
Jeff.
your lead narrative designer?"
Jeff.
That's
I need you to edit this part out or I'm gonna die.
it stays in. All right,
Oh
I'm
my
stopping
god.
recording. Don't end the call. Stop the recording.